My daughter called from an unknown number, whispered, "Daddy, help me," then went silent. I couldn't legally see her, but I legally destroyed them. I never saw it coming. 10 years of marriage. 2 beautiful kids and a life built brick by brick in our modest Missouri home, all dismantled with surgical precision in less than a week. At 32, I'd settled into a comfortable rhythm managing construction projects at Eagle Ridge. Not the engineering career I'd dreamed of before dropping out of college, but it paid the bills. When Tracy got pregnant at 22, abortion wasn't an option for her. So I stepped up, left school, and took the first steady job I could find. No regrets. James and Maddie were worth every sacrifice, James. Now 9 was my little philosopher, always lost in thought with those knowing eyes. And Maddie, 7 years old, with her collection of stuffed animals that needed tucking in each night just like her. My world revolved around them. Tracy used to be sweet. The girl who baked cookies for no reason and laughed at my terrible jokes. That changed about a year ago. The complaints started small, but grew sharper. Nothing was ever enough anymore. It was Friday morning when the first thread came loose. I stopped at the ATM to withdraw cash for Maddie's birthday present, a stuffed elephant she'd been eyeing for months. The machine swallowed my card, displaying only "transaction unavailable." Strange, but I brushed it off. Technical glitch. I'd call the bank later. By 5 o'clock, pulling into our driveway, the silence hit me first. Tracy's car wasn't there. The curtains were drawn tight across every window, unusual for that time of day. When my key turned in the lock, the emptiness inside felt wrong. Too neat. Too quiet. Tracy kids. My voice echoed back at me. No response. I tried. Tracy's cell, straight to voicemail. 3 times. That's when the doorbell rang. A man in a crisp black suit stood on our porch holding a yellow envelope. David Rowe. He asked, already knowing the answer. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside, divorce papers, a restraining order, a custody transfer petition to someone named Marcus King. Who the hell was Marcus King? As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a bank alert. Our joint account had been emptied 3 days ago. 10 years of savings gone. I stumbled to our home security system, scrolling through footage from that morning. There it was, 7:32 a.m. Tracy ushering James and Maddie into an unfamiliar black SUV, each clutching a small backpack. Her movements were calm, practiced. She'd been planning this. Our bedroom told the rest of the story. Family photos removed from frames. Children's favorite toys. Gone passports, birth certificates, health insurance cards, all taken. Tracy's laptop and old phone vanished. No digital footprint left behind. I Googled Marcus King with shaking hands. The search returned images of a polished man in his 40s with a permanent half smile that never reached his eyes. CEO of King's Market, a regional supermarket chain, with that irritating jingle everyone in town could recite. Local business mogul, philanthropist, according to his website. Known ladies' man, according to less official sources. That night I collapsed on my bed, gasping for air like a drowning man. But by dawn, something had crystallized inside me. I dressed methodically. Didn't bother combing my hair. The desperate panic had hardened into something colder, more dangerous, more focused. I will not lose my children. I told my reflection, I will get them back. All of it. The address on the court papers led me to Riverbend Heights, the kind of neighborhood where properties had names instead of numbers. I parked exactly 200 yards from 42 Riverbend Drive, the maximum distance to observe without violating the restraining order. After an hour of waiting, the mansion's front door swung open. A well-dressed woman emerged, clutching an identical yellow envelope to mine. Her face was drained of color. A man King, I presumed, appeared briefly to throw a designer suitcase onto the driveway before slamming the door. As she walked past my car, tears streaming silently down her face, I lowered my window and held up my envelope. "You got one of these too?" I asked. She froze, staring at the envelope, then at me. Her composure cracked completely as she began to sob. "I'm David," I said. "And you are?" She wiped her tears with the back of her hand, offering a broken smile. "I'm Wendy," she replied, "Marcus King's lawful wife." I helped Wendy load her suitcase into my trunk without asking questions. Neither of us spoke as I drove in circles around the neighborhood, checking my rearview mirror constantly to ensure we weren't being followed. The silence between us felt appropriate, like the moment of reverence after a funeral. Wendy alternated between crying and laughing, a distinctly human kind of pain. Finding its voice, "My husband left me for your wife," she whispered without a single word. We ended up at a 24-hour diner off the highway, the kind with sticky laminate tables and bottomless coffee. I counted the bills in my wallet, just enough for a modest dinner for two. Tomorrow's problems would have to wait. I'm the second Mrs. King, Wendy said, stirring her coffee absently. When I met Marcus, he owned 3 grocery stores. I helped him expand to 14 locations. Pride flickered briefly across her face before darkening. I believed in him, in us. She described how Marcus had gradually manipulated her into signing over her assets, an inheritance of over $300,000 that had fueled his early expansion. He has a way of making you feel like you're building something together, until one day you realize you've built his empire with your foundation. Wendy leaned forward, lowering her voice. 3 weeks ago, I found receipts, women's watches, size 6 shoes, hotel bookings twice weekly under TK. Her eyes met mine. Tracy King, I presume. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Tracy's recent transformation, the new lingerie, unexpected confidence, the way she'd started wearing perfume to book club meetings. I'd foolishly interpreted it as an attempt to rekindle our marriage. She wasn't trying to seduce you, Wendy said, reading my thoughts. Tracy doesn't love Marcus. She wants power and money. I drove Wendy back to my house. Her house was locked to her just as mine had been to me. I offered her the couch. No touches, no more words. We uncorked a bottle of wine I'd been saving for our anniversary, 2 castaways sharing a life raft. I'm terrified of losing my kids, I confessed as midnight approached. Wendy placed her hand over mine, her eyes glistening. I have no children left to lose, she said, so I'll help you keep yours. Morning arrived with harsh clarity over coffee that neither of us wanted, but both needed. Wendy mentioned rumors about Marcus desperately wanting an heir for his grocery empire. He's obsessed with legacy, she said. No king's market without a king. Something clicked in my memory. I dug through our filing cabinet, finding a medical folder from after Maddie's birth. Inside was a hospital letter I'd never seen due to severe uterine hemorrhaging. Tracy had undergone an emergency hysterectomy. My wife couldn't have more children, yet she was evidently promising Marcus an heir, likely planning to have him adopt my children as his own. She can't give him what he wants, I said, showing Wendy the letter, but she'll keep him believing she can until it's too late. Wendy replied, our financial situation was dire. Wendy's cards were frozen. When I called my bank, they confirmed Tracy had emptied our joint account 2 weeks prior and opened a new account solely in her name. Between us, we had less than $50, enough for maybe 3 days of food. Wendy took charge of our meager resources, cooking with whatever remained in my refrigerator. That evening, I found myself reading aloud from James's favorite book, more for my comfort than anything else. Don't stop, Wendy said when I paused, embarrassed. It's soothing, like being tucked in as a child. We shared a genuine laugh, our first since this nightmare began. It felt foreign, like muscles that had forgotten their purpose but were slowly remembering. That night, we both dozed off in the living room, she on the couch, me in the recliner. The harsh ring of the landline jolted us awake around 2 a.m. I fumbled for the receiver. Hello, Daddy. A tiny, terrified voice came through my daughter's voice. Help me, I don't want to be here anymore. Then silence, line dead. I stared at the receiver, my hand shaking uncontrollably. Maddie's desperate whisper echoed in my ears as I turned to Wendy, who was now fully alert. That was my daughter. I said, my voice breaking, she needs me. I didn't sleep after Maddie's call. How could I? My 7-year-old daughter's terrified whisper replayed in my head like a broken record. By dawn, I'd worn a path in my living room carpet from pacing. We need to be strategic, Wendy cautioned, setting a cup of coffee in front of me. If you rush over there, you'll violate the restraining order. They could have you arrested, which wouldn't help your children. She was right, but logic felt like a poor substitute for action when my daughter was crying for help. I'd managed to record the last few seconds of Maddie's call, not much, but it was something evidence. "We need to build a counterstrike," I said. "Legal ammunition that proves Tracy and Marcus engineered this whole situation." I called Tracy's father, John, a retired accountant who'd always treated me decently. He agreed to meet at my house that afternoon, bringing Tracy's younger sister, Beth, along. When they arrived, Wendy happened to walk out of the bathroom wearing my bathrobe, the only clean thing available after her shower. John's eyebrows shot up, and Beth's mouth formed a perfect O of shock. "This isn't what it looks like," I said quickly. "This is Wendy King Marcus's wife, the woman your daughter replaced." The color drained from John's face as understanding dawned. Beth sank into a kitchen chair, stunned silent. "Tracy came by last weekend," John admitted after a long pause. "She said you were irresponsible, that you were about to lose your job, that Marcus could provide a better life for the kids with better schools and opportunities. She lied to you." I replied, my voice steadier than I felt, "Just like she's lying to Marcus about being able to give him children." I placed the hospital letter on the table. "Tracy had a hysterectomy after Maddie's birth. She physically cannot have more children." Beth gasped. "I remember that surgery. I drove her to the follow-up appointments." She looked up, her eyes filling with tears. "Why would she do this?" "Money," Wendy answered simply. "Power. The lifestyle she thinks she deserves." After a heavy silence, Beth straightened her shoulders. "I'll help you," she announced. "Tracy calls me every few days. I can pretend to support her. Gather information." John nodded gravely. "We never raised her to behave this way." Before they left, Beth pressed an envelope into my hand, $1,000 in cash. "Consider it a family apology," she whispered. "It's not much, but it should help until we sort this out. News travels fast in small towns." By evening, several of our longtime friends had shown up at my door, concerned about the rumors circulating Mike and Jenny. Our neighbors for 7 years listened in horrified silence as Wendy and I laid out the whole sordid story. I showed them screenshots of our emptied bank account, the restraining order based on fabricated abuse claims, the hospital letter confirming Tracy's surgery. "But she still posts those perfect family photos on Facebook," Jenny said, shaking her head in disbelief. "All those blessed mama captions while she was planning this." Mike's face darkened. Two-Face doesn't begin to cover it. As our friends were leaving, a sleek white Audi pulled into my driveway. Sophia Grant, Tracy's closest friend since college, stepped out, looking nervously over her shoulder. "I've known for months," she confessed, unable to meet my eyes. "Tracy swore me to secrecy." I felt my face harden. "So what brings you here now? Guilt or betrayal?" "Both," Sophia admitted. "Tracy used me as her alibi for meeting Marcus. Then she used me as a witness for her restraining order. She told me exactly what to say to make you look dangerous." Sophia handed me a small memory card. "I recorded her admitting the abuse allegations were completely fabricated. And I heard your daughter call you last night. Tracy took her phone away afterward. I can't stand by anymore, not when the children are suffering." The next morning, Wendy and I went to the Eagle County Legal Aid Office. The receptionist took one look at our situation and connected us with Brian Coulson, a former partner at Shepard & Morris, the very firm Marcus had retained. Coulson's eyes narrowed the moment I mentioned Marcus King. "I used to work for him," he said, leaning forward, "until I refused to falsify audit documents. He had me blacklisted from every major firm in the state." A grim smile spread across his face. "I'll take your case pro bono, partly on principle, partly because I owe him some karmic payback." Coulson gave us a detailed checklist: birth certificates, financial statements, property deeds, asset inventories. Wendy, who'd worked as an accounting assistant before marrying Marcus, proved invaluable in organizing our financial evidence. "Marcus operates through shell companies," she explained, sketching a complex ownership diagram. "He keeps his assets fragmented to minimize tax exposure, but that same structure makes him vulnerable if we can prove fraud." For 3 days, we built our case, gathering affidavits from friends who could testify to my parenting, collecting evidence of Tracy's deliberate deception, and documenting every suspicious financial transaction. As we worked late into our third night, my phone buzzed with a text from Beth. Marcus mortgaged multiple properties to finance a new supermarket location, but community backlash is hurting sales. 3 suppliers canceled contracts this week. I showed the message to Wendy, whose tired face broke into the first genuine smile I'd seen since we met. "He's vulnerable," she said, "and vulnerable men make mistakes. The court of public opinion is faster than any legal system," Coulson advised over coffee the next morning, "and Marcus King's entire business depends on his public image." That afternoon, Wendy and I stood on the public sidewalk outside King's Market flagship store, each holding a large hand-painted sign. Mine read, "Ask me why the owner of King's Market took my wife and children." Wendy's was equally direct, "Want to know about King's Market? Owner's ethics ask me." We'd checked local ordinances carefully. We were on public property, maintaining clear walkways, not blocking the entrance. Perfectly legal. We set up folding chairs and settled in for the long haul. The first curious shoppers approached cautiously, like deer testing unfamiliar terrain. "Aren't you Maddie's dad?" asked a woman in her 60s. "She's in my granddaughter's dance class." I nodded, keeping my voice steady as I explained our situation. The sudden divorce papers, the emptied bank accounts, the fabricated restraining order. I showed photographs of my children on my phone. I haven't been allowed to see them in 10 days. Beside me, Wendy drew her own crowd. She didn't need to perform distress. Her puffy eyes and hollow cheeks told their own story. In her quiet, dignified voice, she detailed how Marcus had systematically stripped her of assets and then discarded her for someone younger. People listened. They took pictures by lunchtime. Truth over money was trending locally on social media. By mid-afternoon, the store manager, a nervous man named Blake, emerged to threaten calling the police. "Please do." I responded calmly. "We're not breaking any laws." The police did come checking our IDs and confirming we weren't trespassing or causing a disturbance. They left after advising Blake that we had every right to be there. That's when a van from the local news station pulled up. "Mr. Rowe, Mrs. King, I'm Diane Wright from Channel 7 News. Would you be willing to share your story on camera?" The segment aired on the 6 o'clock news under the headline, "Local Man Claims Supermarket Mogul Stole Wife and Children." By morning, it had gone viral across the state. We returned daily, adding new evidence to our display. Wendy brought printouts of Marcus's financial statements, highlighting debt-fueled expansion rather than the profitable business he portrayed. I brought copies of my children's birth certificates establishing my legal paternity beyond question. "People think he's this self-made success story," Wendy explained to a growing crowd. "The reality is he's leveraged to the hilt and bleeding cash." On our 3rd day of protest, Sophia sent a new video file footage she'd secretly recorded at Marcus's house, showing Tracy screaming at Maddie, "Get your own breakfast, you ungrateful little brat." My daughter looked thinner than I remembered, swimming in an oversized t-shirt, flinching at her mother's raised voice. That night, Coulson filed our legal countermove. He submitted a comprehensive petition that included a motion to investigate Tracy's financial motivations behind the divorce, an emergency request to lift the restraining order based on our new evidence of fabrication, and a protective order to prohibit Marcus from having unsupervised contact with my children. "We've shifted momentum," Coulson assured me. "They're on defense now." The next day brought unexpected support. Henry, a former King's Market manager, approached us during our protest. "I was fired last month for questioning inventory discrepancies," he said, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "Marcus is quietly liquidating assets, selling off inventory at below-market rates to friends who kick back cash under the table." According to Henry, Marcus had mortgaged his house, his yacht, and several stores to secure a $2.5 million loan for expansion. "But since your protest started, sales have dropped almost 40%. 3 suppliers canceled contracts this week. They don't want to be associated with the scandal." Most surprisingly, Henry revealed that employees were holding secret meetings. "There's talk of forming a co-op to buy the chain if Marcus goes bankrupt. Nobody wants to lose their jobs because the boss can't keep his pants zipped." Our campaign gained momentum, but not without complications. One evening, 2 stern-faced social workers knocked on my door demanding to know where James and Maddie were. "Ms. Rowe claims you've abducted the children. One stated flatly, "That's interesting." I replied, "Considering I haven't seen my children since she took them." I invited them in and presented our evidence. Maddie's distressed phone call photos of bruising on her arms. Video of James describing going hungry all day. The social workers exchanged uncomfortable glances. I suggested a compromise. Beth, the children's aunt, could take temporary custody until the court sorted things out. After several calls to supervisors, they reluctantly agreed, at least temporarily. "This isn't over," one warned. "Any permanent decision will require court approval." The pressure mounted on Marcus and Tracy. They stopped making public appearances. King's Market suppliers delayed deliveries, citing inventory reconciliation needs. On Facebook, local community groups organized boycotts with the hashtag #NoShoppingAtKing's. Wendy and I were packing up our protest signs one evening when Beth called. "They're panicking." She reported, "Tracy's been on the phone all day with their lawyer. Something about financial disclosure requirements they can't meet." I felt a glimmer of hope for the first time since this nightmare began. We were making progress. The truth was emerging. That night, around 11, a soft knock at my front door startled me. Opening it cautiously, I found Tracy standing on my porch, dressed simply, minimal makeup, an unfamiliar hesitance in her posture. "I have a proposition for you," she said without preamble. "Marcus wants to talk with you over Skype tonight." I stared at Tracy standing on my doorstep, her familiar face now somehow foreign to me. Behind her practiced composure, I detected something new. Desperation. "Marcus wants to talk," she repeated. "Tonight at 9 on Skype." After she left, Wendy emerged from the kitchen where she'd been hiding. "This is our opportunity," she said, eyes gleaming with tactical insight. "Let's set up recording equipment. If they make any mistakes, we'll capture golden evidence." I nodded. "Tracy has no idea you're here. Let's keep it that way." At 9 sharp, my laptop chimed with an incoming Skype call. I positioned myself in front of the hidden camera Wendy had set up, then accepted. Marcus King appeared on screen, the perfect picture of corporate confidence in his designer suit. Tracy sat beside him wearing neutral-colored clothing and a carefully blank expression, a stark contrast to the colorful, expressive woman I'd married. "Mr. Rowe," Marcus began, his voice smooth as polished marble, "I think we can reach a reasonable arrangement here." His offer was straightforward. If I would stop the protests, issue a public statement declaring the whole situation a misunderstanding. He would return the house and restore some financial support. In exchange, I'd be granted visitation with my children twice monthly. I kept my face expressionless, giving away nothing. "Your silence suggests you need more incentive," Marcus continued, leaning forward. "Look, those kids aren't even part of my long-term plan. Once Tracy and I have our own child, I won't care about yours anyway." Something inside me snapped. "She can't have children," I said flatly. "Tracy had a hysterectomy after Maddie's birth. You're building your future on a lie." Tracy's face contorted with rage. Marcus turned to her confusion, breaking through his polished veneer. That's when Wendy stepped into frame. She leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss on my cheek, then looked directly at the camera. "I'll take care of his children as if they were my own flesh and blood." Tracy erupted, screaming obscenities. "You worthless leftover woman," she shrieked. "I'll sue you both for harassment." I terminated the call mid-tirade and immediately backed up the recording, sending a copy to Coulson that night. While we were still processing what had happened, Sophia texted with yet another damning video footage of Marcus pounding the table and calling Maddie an ungrateful brat who doesn't know how good she has it. Just after midnight, frantic pounding at my front door jolted us awake. I rushed to open it and found James standing there holding Maddie's hand. Both children were disheveled, their clothes dirty. 9-year-old James, always my little protector, had somehow navigated them through the neighborhood in the dead of night. "Daddy," Maddie whispered, "I'm hungry." I swept them both into my arms, too overwhelmed for words. Wendy appeared silently beside me, not asking questions, simply retrieving milk and blankets for the exhausted children. Once they were settled, James pulled out his phone, a cheap prepaid model Beth had secretly given him. "I recorded Mom," he said with a determination no child his age should need. The video showed Tracy screaming, slamming doors, calling Maddie a burden, and threatening to send them both away if they didn't behave. I carefully transferred all this evidence to a separate hard drive, meticulously labeling and organizing each file: audio recordings, videos, photographs, medical records. My case was building by the hour. The next morning, Child Protective Services returned, insisting the children be returned to their mother. This time I was prepared. I showed them the photos of bruises on Maddie's arms, video of Maddie trembling while trying to eat, footage of Marcus berating my daughter, a written statement from Beth detailing Tracy's erratic behavior. After a tense hour of discussions and multiple phone calls to supervisors, they reluctantly agreed to my compromise. Beth would take temporary custody, with Wendy serving as an unofficial supervisor. "This isn't permanently resolved," the senior caseworker warned. "The court will make the final determination." In the week leading up to our hearing, Coulson prepared our countersuit with surgical precision. Our objectives were clear: vacate the fraudulent restraining order, secure full custody of my children, and investigate Tracy's financial deception. Meanwhile, Wendy worked with a separate attorney to prove Marcus had abused his financial control over her assets. The web of evidence connecting both cases strengthened our position considerably. The day of the hearing arrived with unexpected public interest. Local reporters gathered outside the courthouse, and the gallery filled quickly. Tracy and Marcus arrived with a new attorney notably less prestigious than their previous representation. David and Coulson sat ready with mountains of organized evidence. The judge allowed our evidence to be presented in full. The Skype recording Marcus's merchandise comments about my children, Tracy's recorded admission about fabricating abuse claims, testimony from both Sophia and Beth, and most damaging, James's heartbreaking videos of his mother's mistreatment. The breaking point came halfway through the proceedings, when Tracy's attorney suddenly requested permission to withdraw from the case, citing recently discovered client dishonesty. Marcus stared at Tracy with dawning horror as the video revealed her inability to bear children. Tracy attempted to portray herself as the victim, but the overwhelming evidence left no room for sympathy. Before the judge announced her decision, I stood and addressed the court directly. "Your Honor, I am not a victim here. I am a father, and I will fight to the end to protect my children." The courtroom fell silent. The judge's ruling was comprehensive and decisive. I received full custody with complete control over educational, medical, and financial decisions for both children. Tracy was denied visitation indefinitely, with review only possible after completing extensive psychological rehabilitation and reintegration programs. I retained our home and 65% of our marital assets. Additionally, the judge ordered a tax investigation into Marcus's business practices and placed a temporary freeze on King's Market assets pending further inquiry. As we exited the courthouse, a reporter thrust a microphone toward Wendy. "What are your plans now?" she asked. Wendy glanced at me, then smiled. "There's still so much work to be done." Life settled into new patterns as autumn gave way to winter. The leaves fell, the air chilled, and somehow we found our footing. Wendy officially moved in 3 weeks after the court case. It wasn't a decision we debated or even discussed at length. It simply happened as natural as breathing. One morning I woke to find her organizing the children's winter clothes, sorting through outgrown items, and making lists of what they needed. "We'll need heavier jackets for both of them," she said without looking up. "And James's boots are too small." I just nodded, realizing she had already become essential to us. The first time Maddie called her Mom Wendy was during a bedtime story Wendy had been reading, The Secret Garden, doing all the voices with dramatic flair that made my daughter giggle uncontrollably. As Wendy kissed her goodnight, Maddie whispered, "Thank you for the story, Mom Wendy." I saw Wendy's eyes fill with tears as she quietly closed the bedroom door. Later that week, James looked up from his homework and announced with 9-year-old directness, "Dad, you should marry her." "Why's that, buddy?" "Because she makes the good pancakes," he replied, as if this settled everything. "And she makes you smile again." With our lives stabilizing, I made a decision that had been brewing for months. I enrolled in night classes at the local university, determined to finish the engineering degree I'd abandoned 10 years ago. Working days, studying nights. It wouldn't be easy, but it felt right. "You don't have to do this now. Wendy said when I showed her my acceptance letter. I do, I insisted. For the kids to show them it's never too late. The financial logistics worked out unexpectedly. An investment Wendy had nearly forgotten about, shares in her father's old manufacturing company, was bought out by a larger corporation. The payout came to just under $300,000, enough to ease our immediate worries and establish college funds for both children. Meanwhile, Marcus and Tracy's carefully constructed new life collapsed spectacularly. Marcus was forced to sell his supermarket chain at a massive loss to cover mounting debts. The Buyer A cooperative formed by his former employees, who immediately instituted better working conditions and profit sharing. While vacationing in St. Lucia, a transparent attempt to escape mounting pressure, Marcus received an anonymous fax containing Tracy's medical records, including confirmation of her hysterectomy. No one claimed responsibility for this information leak, though Wendy and I exchanged knowing glances when we heard the news. 2 days later, Marcus's docked yacht was reportedly ransacked by vagrants, who stripped it of valuables. His insurance claim was denied because the vessel had been left unattended beyond the policy's allowed time frame. As for Tracy, she fled the state after the court ruling and never attempted to contact the children again. Months later, a viral TikTok video showed her being escorted from an upscale Miami hotel for fraudulent behavior toward international guests. She'd apparently been posing as a wealthy investor to lure potential victims. When Maddie eventually asked where her mother had gone, I carefully responded, "She's learning how to be a better person." It wasn't entirely untrue. Tracy would indeed need to learn that if she ever hoped to find peace, our newly formed family flourished in unexpected ways. Beth visited regularly, bridging what could have been an awkward gap between the children's past and present. My parents, initially wary of the unusual circumstances, soon became Wendy's strongest advocates. We hosted small monthly dinners that gradually healed the rifts Tracy had created. Coulson stopped billing us after the first month, claiming we were pro bono in perpetuity. But really, we'd become friends. He joined our dinners, often bringing ridiculous board games that made Maddie shriek with laughter. Even more surprising was the community's sustained support. Neighbors who'd followed our story through the media checked in regularly. The reporter who'd covered our court case sent James a chemistry set for his birthday. People genuinely cared. One ordinary Tuesday evening after the kids were in bed, I led Wendy out to our small balcony. The night was cool, but not uncomfortable, with stars stretching endlessly above us. "There's a mother role still vacant in this household," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Would you like to make it official?" Wendy laughed. "No ring." I pulled out a silver foil creation that James had spent all afternoon crafting. "The jeweler's work isn't up to standard, but the sentiment is solid." She took the makeshift ring, then wrapped her arms around me. Still the best proposal I could imagine. 2 years later, I completed my engineering degree. Within 6 months, I launched Rose Structural with Wendy as our financial officer. The business grew steadily, built on word of mouth and reputation rather than flashy marketing. The children thrived. James discovered a passion for robotics, while Maddie blossomed in creative writing. For her 8th grade essay contest, she wrote a piece titled, "My Mother is the One I Chose, Not the One Who Bore Me," which won first place and left teachers dabbing their eyes. Last weekend, we took a family camping trip to celebrate 5 years together. As dusk settled over the mountains, Maddie glanced nervously into the surrounding woods. "Mom, Wendy," she asked, "are you afraid of snakes?" Wendy looked up from the campfire she was building, a smile playing at her lips. "Only the ones that speak human languages." We all burst into laughter, the comfortable, secure laughter of people who know they belong together. As the sun dipped below the hills, casting golden light across our campsite, I watched my family, this miraculous, reconstructed family, and felt something I'd never expected to feel again after Tracy left: complete contentment. Sometimes, the things we lose make room for what we were meant to find all along.